All right, welcome back to Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020 World Tour. Last time we landed basically in the middle of a field in Sheffield, United Kingdom, because for some reason they don't have Sheffield's airport here. We did almost land here at Cole Alston Airfield. We didn't. We landed just in the middle of nowhere, where the airport should be, I think. But we're going to take off from this little airfield, I guess, and continue on through the UK. We'll probably try to at least get to London, if not farther. We might see a few other places on the way. We will be listening to some podcasts, as always. We will listen to today's Tony Kornheiser show to start with. This is December 15th, Friday, December 15th. It's 9:12 p.m. This is what I'm doing with my wild Friday night. This is the day after the NCAA volleyball tournament semifinals, where Nebraska swept Pittsburgh to advance to the championship game, and they will be taking on Texas, not Wisconsin, which was a surprise. I thought Wisconsin would be there, but we'll see what happens. That'll be on Sunday. So after the Tony Kornheiser show, we'll go to the Friday episode of the Sharp and Handley radio show from Omaha, Nebraska, and they will talk a lot about that. But we are starting with the Tony Kornheiser show from December 15th, 2023.
Hi, it's Tony. On today's show, we'll talk to Barry Svrluga about the very real possibility of the Cavs and Wizards moving to Virginia. We'll go around the NFL with Jason LaConfort, and we'll get picks from James Carville and Jeff Ma. A full show, but first, commerce.
Life as a parent is non-stop. I'm a daily Carvana. Is as easy as...
As easy as pie?
Sure. Previously on the Tony Kornheiser Show.
No, for second year in a row, no one close to the Cajuns. I was 19-1 on Kornheiser last week.
It was
Chuck no catch me.
He was 6-1.
That's what he wrote. He has these triple plays,
yes,
quadruple plays.
No, he had one double play.
Well, he's counting the Heisman Trophy winner that he took at 12 odds.
Well, that's ridiculous.
12? He's getting 12 points for that.
No, that's as the commissioner. No,
all right.
No.
The Tony Kornheiser Show is on now.
We will get to all that later with Carville. You can't count the Heisman. Barry Svrluga is on with us now, and we're going to talk about Ted Leonsis threatening to and saying he will move the Washington Wizards and the Washington Capitals to Virginia in a second. I just wanted to say this to make everybody aware of this. Everybody knows that when I'm healthy, I train with Helen, the best trainer in the world. Now, Helen and Uriel are the best trainers I've ever had. Helen's hubby, Brian, has written a movie, Merry Magic Christmas. This Sunday night is its premiere on Lifetime.
And obviously we've changed the time. This is live weather, though, in Sheffield, United Kingdom. We changed the time to about 11 a.m. or so.
8 o'clock, Merry Magic Christmas. And this Sunday night, that's the best night in all of television. Why do you think Sunday Night Football is the highest rated show week after week in all of television by a mile? Because Sunday night, people stay home.
The Sunday before Christmas?
Yeah, people stay home.
That's
so
try
spot. To get to Lifetime or tape it. You can tape it if you have it. Do they still tape TV or with streaming you can't
DVR
tape? Whatever you do.
Yeah.
Merry Magic
like
Christmas
TV business.
on Lifetime. All right. Barry joins us now. Here's the first question I have. Now, you and I, we totally agree on this whole deal, but we have prejudices. We live in Washington, D.C. We cannot talk about this without saying we live in Washington, D.C. and want Washington, D.C. to keep these teams. I didn't know about this till about 4 days ago. I had no idea this was bubbling around. When did you learn this was possible?
So I had heard bubbling, and probably 3 or 4 months ago, but that's really all it was. And I'll be honest with you, Tony, in a very irresponsible journalistic way, I was dismissive of it as kind of a leverage play by Ted. Oh, he has to show the city that he's having talks with somebody else because that will strengthen his position to get what he wants downtown, which is $600 million, and he'd throw in $200 million, and he'd improve the existing arena that Abe Poland put there in 1997, really, it's not an exaggeration, transformed a section of the city 100%. That is important. That's just a few blocks off the National Mall, that's right by the National Portrait Gallery, that, on nights when the Wizards and Cats are there, is teeming with activity. We obviously have Metro reporters and other sports reporters who work on this. They, when I came to them with a tip late last week that I was hearing there was a date for an announcement, they were already in position and had done some work, but we did not have, people like to do this stuff in the dark. They don't, for such an outlay and an impact on the public, they want these negotiations to be in private. So getting it confirmed was difficult because even public officials kind of clammed up. We did end up breaking it on Monday, but that was only a couple days before the announcement. So it feels very, very sudden, even though the talks with Monumental, between Virginia and Monumental, began in February.
Is there any other reason to do this? Any other reason than money?
No, there's really not. And you'll get a lot of lip service about, and Ted is very good, Ted Leonsis is very good at being like, well, I don't envision this region as, we should stop being so provincial and being like, I'm from Maryland and I'm from the district and I'm from Virginia, and those are totally different things. He has long described, when he went back a few years to try to get the Olympics to Washington, he kind of pitched everything from Baltimore to Richmond as like one big super city, and that's how we should think of it. And that's really not how people here think of it. There are loyalties and allegiances that run deep. But to your money point, Tony, this is a new model, and I point to the Braves ballpark in Atlanta, and I say in Atlanta, it's really not in Atlanta. It's in Cobb County, 10 miles northwest of downtown. It is completely soulless, but it is a moneymaker because the Braves were able to put their stadium in a place where they could develop around it, and that's hugely important to this project because Ted and the commercial real estate developer that's working on this will be able to invent a mini city out of nothing and profit off that, which in a perfect world, if you trust your sports owners, that money would be put back into the competitiveness of the two teams that will play there. It's MCI Center, that was the name a million years ago, at Capital One Arena downtown. The development around there, which has struggled since the pandemic, even when it was thriving, Leonsis was not making the profit off of that. So that's the model. I don't find it appealing, but I get where, the way I phrase it, I think that this deal could be bad for the district because they lose the two teams, bad for Alexandria because of traffic and people don't want that stuff there, and really good for Monumental Sports and Ted Leonsis because they've got, potentially revenue generators that they couldn't dream of downtown.
I called him villain on the air. I said this was villainy, and I believe that. What would you call it?
I think you're right there, Tony. I mean, you're stealing teams, anchor teams that provide you 85 dates that are crucial to a neighborhood that, as I said before, really didn't exist before the teams came there, and you're taking it to a place that where you will profit from them. And who knows what will happen to that neighborhood, which is already teetering since the pandemic, when the two teams move out. Monumental is saying, hey, we're still going to have 100 dates there.
Really? Is Georgetown going to be there? Or is Georgetown going to move
there? They'll move the Mystics there. They'll do the concerts. And then, it's just a shell game because you move the Mystics that you just opened an arena in Ward 8, the neediest ward in the city. You're stripping that community engagement from there to a neighborhood that you just said was not good enough for the Wizards and the Capitals.
Son, that's just like, I don't think anything will be there, okay? I think nothing will be there in a relatively short amount of time. This is worse than the learners to me. And I was very condemning of the learners for saying, we're going to sell now because we're in the business of making money, and we're going to sell the team. And I thought that was terrible, because I think it's a sacred trust to have a team. And this is, to me, far worse, because you just move in this team to a locale that's better for you, and thinking you can get away with calling them the Washington this and the Washington that. I note that in watching the Wizards the other night, and they stink, and that goes to the owner too. That goes to the owner. And he hasn't reduced ticket prices on this stinking team. Their logo is the Washington Monument. You've seen that, right, Barry? It's the Washington Monument. What's the new logo going to be?
On the day that this was announced, old people like you and me who get the print edition of the Washington Post picked up their post, and there was a wraparound ad on the front page, covering half the front page, for deals on Wizards tickets. The jerseys that the players,
district
or whoever, it said "Rep the District," and it had the diamond-shaped map of Washington D.C. And for people who don't live here, like when you see just the outline of the district boundaries, like that means something to you here. That doesn't mean Alexandria. It doesn't mean Bethesda. It doesn't mean Prince George's County. It doesn't mean Arlington. It means the District of Columbia. And that sort of kind of trying to connect with the urbanness that the city provides, not the suburbanness that the burbs provide. It was just embarrassing that on that day they were announcing that we're taking your team and moving it out of town.
I wouldn't, if I were the learners now, I always say things, if I were this guy or I were that guy, if I had the power in the world, I'd padlock that building right now and make them play at George Mason University for the rest of the 5 years it'll take to build this thing. But if I were the learners right now, I wouldn't sell my baseball team to him, because I wouldn't trust he'd keep it here. I wouldn't trust him. I wouldn't sell it to him. Do you have any feelings on that?
Well, I mean, that's such a complicated thing, because, until 5 days ago, you would have said that the learners were the least desirable owner in town. And because they said, almost 2 years ago now, or a year and a half ago, that, hey, we're exploring a sale of the team, and have not yet sold it, and have left it in complete limbo, and for in perpetuity right now, because, the way they do business is they value any property, in this case, the baseball team, at X, and if you offer X minus 1, they will not sell it to you. So we're kind of stuck in hole there.
But meanwhile, they're not pouring money into it. They're not doing anything with the team.
Yeah, you could get into the weeds and be like, well, they're not. It's probably they're a year away from being ready to go out and make a major free agent signing. But you're right; it's going to be another struggle of a season in the win-loss column there. The thing, Tony, and I think we've talked about this before, and I wrote this probably, I don't know, a year ago. Dan Snyder gave sports owners in this town cover because he was, whatever you did, he was the worst.
Yes, you're right.
And when he left, that cover is gone. And now, major questions about the stewardship of all these franchises are, they're right there. They're right there in front of you. And this move is a real question for Ted. I would also say, Tony, that these plans are plans. And this, even though they had been working on this deal for 7 or 8 months, we're a long way from the ground being broken, let alone the teams moving out there.
I will say this. This is important to note, I think. You can only be the governor of Virginia once. One 4-year term. Maybe you can come back after 4 more years, but you cannot establish the kind of dynasty that you can in other states. So Glenn Youngkin's out. He's done. So if this doesn't happen right away, it may not happen at all, right? I mean, there's a political movement in Virginia that's different in other sorts of states. I also think, and I don't think that the Mayor Muriel Bowser has been very good on this issue. I really don't. I suspect that she never imagined it would come to this. But there will be a football team at that RFK site now, don't you think? That will happen.
Well, the pressure is on her to make that happen because she has wanted her legacy to be, I'm the mayor that brought football back, and that is my defining moment. If she does not get the football team at the RFK site, then her legacy is, I lost the hockey and basketball teams and I couldn't get the football team here. And now we have 4 major sports, only one of which plays in the District of Columbia. I think the pressure, and I'm going to write this for over the weekend, is going up on the mayor, and that's not good.
I agree.
You don't want, we can debate whether the football team should return to that site, and we can't really debate it until we know what the funding picture would look like. But you don't want the mayor to be compromised and to feel pressure that she has to do this because she lost the other 2 teams, because that could only worsen the deal for the residents of the District of Columbia.
It's bad. The whole thing is bad. And in my mind, utterly unexpected. I didn't think Ted Leonsis, guy who was a Georgetown grad, correct me if I'm wrong, they haven't moved Georgetown to Tyson's Corner yet, have they? I think it's still in the District of Columbia. To just, run out on the city like this, it really is bad. It's angering, yes?
I am. I was surprised at how emotional I got about it, talking about it in reporting and talking about it on the radio. And I don't mean tears, but just quite fired up. This is, we talked about this a million times too, Tony. Owning a pro sports franchise is not like owning a mall. People are emotionally invested in your product in a way that they're not emotionally invested in whether your mall is anchored by Nordstrom's or Lord & Taylor or whatever. There's a civic element of this. Ted Leonsis has often talked about the civic responsibility of being a sports owner. He's trying to say that I'm going to be doing something great for the region. The backside of that is he's potentially making a move that could devastate a really important part of downtown.
Putting a stake in downtown D.C., right in the heart of downtown D.C., as he lines his pockets. Come on.
Correct.
This is, and fine. A lot of people say good for him. I'm not one of those people. Thanks, Barry.
Appreciate it, Tony. Thanks very much.
Barry Zaluga has written very, very well about this issue and everything, really. We'll take a break. Jason Lockenforo is up next, and we can talk to him. I don't know that we want to talk about that game last night. That was brutal. That was brutal. I'm Tony Kornheiser.
You're listening to the Tony Kornheiser Show.
This is the Trade Coffee read. Trade Coffee can help you nail holiday gift giving this year. A subscription to Trade is the perfect gift for any coffee lover. You just choose how much to spend, and Trade will help your recipient personalize the coffee to their preferences. Best of all, Trade's gift subscriptions cut out the worry about shipping deadlines, as the digital subscription is delivered instantly to their inbox. I don't know about the technology of this. I know about the coffee. The coffee's very good. It's just very good. You should try it.
I'm giving this as a gift, and it's great.
Yeah.
People love it.
Yeah. Trade is the destination for better coffee at home. Experience the best curated for you coffee delivered to your door when and how you want it. Whether you already know what you like or you're new to specialty coffees, need some help, Trade makes it easy and convenient to discover.
I'll give you some recommendations, like using that saucepan.
Yeah. Well, is that what it's called, a saucepan? That's what I heat the water in.
Bring out your camp equipment.
That's what I heat
Start
the water
boiling
in.
the water over an open flame.
You go to the sentimental part of your life when it comes to the holiday season, and maybe that's it for me. Give the gift of better coffee at home. Buy yourself a Trade subscription and enjoy your first bag free, or give the coffee lovers in your life the gift of a Trade digital subscription. Visit drinktrade.com/Tony to get brewing. That's drinktrade.com/Tony. And once again, drinktrade.com/Tony. It's worth it. If you travel even a little bit, you know that what luggage you choose makes your travel experience better. That's why you should consider getting your luggage from Briggs & Riley. Their luggage is extremely durable, has amazing features that make packing and getting around easier. They also have the best lifetime guarantee in the industry. If your bag is ever broken or damaged, they will repair it free of charge. No proof of purchase needed. I mean, come on. What more can you ask for?
That's pretty good.
Briggs & Riley luggage is extremely durable with rigorous testing and premium materials to last for life. In fact, they believe in their luggage so deeply they've backed it with the best guarantee in the industry. They will repair any broken part, I repeat, of your Briggs & Riley luggage. No receipt needed forever. No questions asked, even if an airline damages your bag. And here are some other reasons why you'll love their luggage. Their one-of-a-kind expansion feature that lets you expand the bag, put all your clothes in, and then compress it back to its original size. So you can pack up to 34% more stuff in the same size suitcase that still fits in the overhead compartment on a plane. Most of their bags have a handlebar that is on the outside of the bag so you can pack your clothes on a flat surface, and you don't have to specifically fold your clothes to fit around the oddly shaped interior. They also have supremely smooth wheels for easy gliding through your travels. Travelwear engineered for better journeys, guaranteed for life. Go to briggs-riley.com to learn more.
You're listening to the Tony Kornheiser Show. Have I got a story for you? Now I was only 5 years old, excited and awake. On the night before Christmas, my most favorite of all days. When lo, I heard a noise downstairs, so I crept out to catch a glimpse. And there I found my mother dear with Santa locking lips. He said to me, "Go back to sleep, this is just a dream." No, 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 said I to keep hands from my mother, please. He said, "Look, son, it's me. Oh, I think my dad is Santa Claus."
Such a great tune. Wonderful. Tim Wildsmith, Nashville, Tennessee, writes, "One of my highlights of the holiday season last year was listening to you, Michael and Nigel, laugh along with the song. I thought I'd send it in again. Still maybe a little too soon to play this one from Bootsy and the Hammer, but one day I'll take it and enjoy it too. It's available on all major streaming platforms. Mean a lot if they added it to their favorite playlist. That's very nice from Tim. And he plays in Jason La Canfora, and we're joined by Odyssey NFL insider Jason La Canfora, host of the podcast In the Huddle, which covers the entire NFL. I don't really want to talk about last night because that was brutal beyond words.
Yeah.
Everybody knows that the coach at San Diego, or whatever they call that team, is going to be fired anyway because they underperformed. They've underperformed all year, and they have no chance on the quarterback. So let me get to another loss that I think is actually important in the greater scheme of things. The Miami loss over the weekend. What did that say to you?
It certainly raises some questions. The everything that went into them finding a way to lose that game. I think if you're inclined to believe that they are maybe that their highs are a little too high and are a little too sporadic. In other words, they can hit some notes, but they can't sustain them. And when they do hit those notes, they're usually playing against teams that are so far inferior to them that it's just sort of the perfect storm. And that when things get a little rough and when they're not on that fully tuned up Ferrari and there's a sprocket out of place here or there's a lug nut that's too loose there, the whole thing can fall apart to a degree that frankly it should for teams that are really good in this league. So it raised concerns, just their energy level, their direction as an offense, the way everything just sort of torpedoed when Tyreek Hill left the field. I mean, that's a Titans team that had been a speed bump for everybody on the road. I mean, they've been one of the worst road teams in the NFL, and for them to be able to come back repeatedly and come back with help from the offense and the defense, like that was one of those collapses where you don't even really know who to blame most. Like Vic Fangio, Mike McDonald, McDaniel, which side of the ball, which individuals. It was so pervasive and collective that I almost think that it does maybe speak to their psyche a little bit, and them maybe being a little bit fragile. Yeah, I have concerns, but look, the Jets have been a tough out for them forever. And we can go to that Black Friday game, and you can look at the score and say, oh, well, geez, the Dolphins, killed them. Well, I mean, Tim Boyle threw the ridiculous pick six. There was a touchdown for Mostert at the end where I don't really know what was going on there. But that was a tough game for the most part. And Tua's numbers against the Jets in his career are dreadful. And you can look at Herbert and Hurts and Tua the first time and Josh Allen. The Jets have faced 5 elite quarterbacks. They've combined for 4 touchdowns and 10 interceptions against them. I think the Jets will be ready to play this game. I'm not buying Zach Wilson at all. But yes, I think the Dolphins are vulnerable, and I believe that the Buffalo Bills are very live for me to win that division.
This is interesting. It's one of the questions I wrote down. Is there still time for Kansas City and Buffalo? Last week, you picked Dallas to win over Philadelphia, and they killed them. You picked Buffalo to win over Kansas City, and they escaped with a win. But you were right on both of those games. If I mention Kansas City and Jacksonville and Buffalo now, 3 AFC teams, and the Jacksonville game is against Baltimore, of course, in Jacksonville.
Yeah.
Which of those teams do you like the most?
Maybe Buffalo. I think Buffalo beats Dallas this weekend. If there's weather, great, even if it's not a true weather game.
Right.
I still like Buffalo in this spot. Dallas's efficiencies drop way off on the road. Dallas, I think Buffalo will be able to move the ball on Dallas in a couple of different ways. I think the Buffalo Bills are ready for this game, and I think the Buffalo Bills can see a path to redemption despite everything that happened before their bye. I just don't buy the Cowboys in these spots. Maybe they'll prove me wrong, but
right.
I think they've kind of run their NFC gauntlet, and this is not them in Western, in Western New York, in mid to late December. Just don't think that's their jam.
Okay.
Jacksonville is going to have a hard time with the Baltimore Ravens. They played a 28-27 game down there a year ago. I certainly think the Ravens will do their part and score at least 27-30 points in this game. I'm not sure if the Jags will. I mean, the way to beat the Ravens is to run. Be able, you can run efficiently and effectively on them. I just don't know that Jacksonville can do it on anybody with the state of their offensive line. And look, I think Kansas City, all that whining, crying, pouting, all that stuff that's out of character for them, I think speaks to larger issues. I don't think it's about Kadarius Toney and that particular decision and the officials and everything that went into it. I think it speaks more to their own realization that we're not what we once were. We more than ever need every creature comfort. We need everything to go our way. We need to get the calls. We need to be at home. We need to catch the breaks. And none of those things are happening. And they're going to have to go on the road in the postseason for the first time. And I don't think they feel very good about that.
I agree.
So I think that's a team that is probably due for a one and done in the postseason. And look, maybe they win a game, but Kansas City this Kansas City team having to go on the road and win multiple road playoff games in a very tough AFC, I don't fancy their chances, and I don't think they fancy their chances.
It's interesting. I mean, I know that I'm basing all of these questions around losses, because this year the losses are more prevalent and more determining than the wins, with the exception of San Francisco, I guess. But San Francisco lost 3 in a row. So I wrote a question down. What do the 2 straight Philadelphia losses tell you? And they got beat bad.
Yeah, I mean, look, they have warts. They're not a complete football team. They're not as good, really, by most metrics as they were a year ago. They were really good at the most important metric, which was finding ways to win football games. That was a gauntlet that they had to run. And this, look, going to Seattle late in the season is by no means easy. But I just don't think this is the caliber of opponent that they've had to face recently.
No, certainly not.
And I don't know what the Eagles' pass defense will look like. You know, we're not probably going to see it really tested again here until the postseason. And what will that look like? What will they figure out, if anything? You know, I'm not the biggest guy in the world on their defensive coordinator. You know, I was a little surprised by some of the moves they made staff-wise. And they lost both their coordinators, and that's a big deal. And that's difficult to adjust to on the fly. But we're late enough in the year now where nobody wants to hear about that anymore. I do believe that they will become a more productive offense here now that they're not facing some of those calibers of defense. And Seattle's been the path of least resistance for a while here. I think this is a bounce-back spot for them. I think they win this football game. I'm not sure it's super sexy. I'm not sure it's, you know, and they're going to look like the greatest show on field turf out there. But I think they will get, they showed you, I think, some things early in that Dallas game with some of the commitment to the run and including option runs and design runs for the quarterback. And I think you're going to see a little bit more of that in this game. And I think they're going to let teams know that, hey, you might have to defend us a little differently in the postseason than if you had played us in October or November.
Can I ask you, I was, you know, I did a double take that the NFL is going to play a game in Brazil.
Oh, sure.
I mean, what is American football popular on any level in Brazil, or do they think that they can get 65,000 to fill a stadium anywhere in the world, right?
Yeah, I think, you know, and look, they've done a lot of studies on this forever, and you do hit a saturation point in North America, so, you know, what is the great beyond, and more to the point, how much money will they spend? And yeah, I mean, obviously it's a huge population center. You know, you look at any... look at concerts, you know what I mean, and some of the biggest grossing concerts of all time, some of the highest attended concerts of all time, they're in soccer stadiums in Brazil. You know, it's lust for money and profits, and it is what it is. I mean, what it means for the teams and who were the first sort of, you know, who sent over there first to kind of figure it all out and have to deal with it and all that, like, who cares? It could only be 2 of, you know, 32. The other 30 can sit back and watch. They're going to go everywhere. Look, there's no doubt in my mind that there's going to be more and more games in Germany. We've already seen a point where I think we're going to get 8 games a year in London. That's going to happen.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, I think even like China, man, if other people are playing footsie with China, these billionaires aren't going to not do it for some altruistic reason.
It'd be so great if that happened, and I can say to Will Bond, stop telling me about the NBA in China. Shut up with the NBA. The NFL just drew 3 million people. You know, that would be interesting. Anyway.
Yeah, but they will continue to go to all corners of the globe if they think they can, you know, grow their brand and make some money there.
Plug your radio show for us.
You listen to me 2 to 6 on Inside Access on 105.7 The Fan in Baltimore, or tune in anywhere on the Odyssey app and listen to us in podcast form. You can check me out in the Washington Post on weekends, anytime they're playing NFL football, on CBS Sportsline. Yeah, that's mostly it. And the In the Huddle podcast also.
No, I got the outro on that. I got that. One small question.
Keep stepping on your toes.
One small question. Do you think Antonio Pierce can keep that job with the Ravens?
I do. I thought he could at the time he got hired. Talked to a lot of people about it. Wrote about it at the Washington Post. Yes, and if you listen to what Mark Davis had to say in The Athletic this week, it's clear he has no clue. Still, and has no cogent plan for how this is going to go, and he's basically like, pray for me, I think I might get it right this time. Yeah, it would not shock me if, I'm not sure he's going to keep the coach and the GM, but it would not shock me if Antonio Pierce remained their head coach.
Thank you, Jason. Thank you.
Thank you guys. Have a good weekend.
That was Odyssey NFL insider Jason Lockenforum. Make sure to follow In the Huddle on the Odyssey app or subscribe where you get your podcasts. We will come back with Carvel and Ma. We think, we hope, we never really know.
You're listening to the Tony Kornheiser Show.
This is the Game Time read. You shouldn't have to worry when you buy tickets to your next big event. Game Time is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you. With phenomenal last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, which I would say is the most important thing, and the best price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. You want to know if you're going to buy a ticket, you want to know what your view is, right? Absolutely. You don't want to be in Fenway and stuck behind a pole. You want to know what your views are.
I'd love to see what my view is in 2028 for a Wizards game.
In Virginia?
Yeah.
It would be great.
It's a nice son of Potomac.
Game Time has deals on tickets right up to the start of the event and even an hour after it starts. You buy a ticket after it starts. I assume that's a discounted ticket.
Oh, no.
It's the place to find last-minute seats. Find exclusive flash deals and sponsored deals on tickets for football, basketball, baseball, concerts, comedy, theater, more. With zone deals, you pick the section and Game Time picks the seats for big-time savings. And the Game Time guarantee means you'll always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. I believe that is saying to you, go up and down your row and find out what people paid for these tickets. You know, just to see if you can get $1.50 back.
Yeah, sure.
Try to do it. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code TONY for $20 off your first purchase. Hey, how much did you pay for this seat? It's a pretty good seat, right? How much? Listen what I pay. What did you pay? Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code TONY for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed.
You're listening to the Tony Kornheiser Show.
This is a solo stove read, and it's a little bit different. The copy was written for me as if I was some sort of hipster. You people know I'm not, but let's take a run at it. Recently, the West Coast legend himself, Snoop Dogg, announced that he's done with smoke. It's over. He's eliminating it. How could it be that the dog father, who once famously urged us to smoke every day, could now be giving it up? Well, we've now learned, as it turns out, that he's going smokeless, joining forces with the makers of the world's most popular smokeless fire pit, Solo Stove, and has even been coined their official spokesperson. It wouldn't be Snoop if he didn't drop it like it's hot. God, am I too old for this? Which is exactly what he's doing with the Snoop Stove, a limited edition bonfire fire pit. Designed by Snoop himself, each custom fire pit comes with a going smokeless bucket hat and a limited run of stickers. Can someone in the studio please order me one before they sell out? I've seen him in commercials.
Yeah.
He does everything now. He became friendly with Martha Stewart.
Yeah, very good friends.
It changed the whole arc of his career.
Yeah.
And now he does Monday Night Football, right? Doesn't he do the pregame song on Monday Night Football?
Oh, I think you're right,
He
yes.
does everything.
Yeah, the
this
Corona
guy.
ads,
You
yeah.
understand he was a football coach at one point. He coached his kid.
Did not know that.
His kid was a scholarship player at either USC or UCLA. Oh, yeah. Run, don't walk to solostove.com to pick up the limited edition pit and join Snoop in going smokeless for good.
You're listening to the Tony Kornheiser Show. The Tony Kornheiser Show.
Well, you wake up in the morning, boy. You hear the ding-dong ring. Then you look upon the table, boy. You see the same darn thing.
This is Paul Evans with Midnight Special.
On the table, boy.
James Carville being the only person we've ever had to select his own walk of music.
What you better
Most people know the Johnny Rivers version, but this is the original
You
version.
get in trouble.
You got a great week. He was 6-1.
Do you want to do the read?
Oh, here's a read, yeah. This week's picks with James Carville and Jeff Ma, brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Make every moment more. 6-1, 55, 45-1, making money. But you can't put in the Heisman winner. That's a separate bet, isn't it?
No, right. At the beginning of the year, I said this guy's 12-1.
Right.
You know what you do when you bet $100 at 12-1? You get $1,200 back.
Right.
This Chuck Todd whining crap. And you didn't give that without over-unders, without points, without anything. I never heard of a casino that didn't count a 12-to-1 bet.
All right, so then you would be 67, 45, and 1. But let me just ask this.
I just think one of the bets yesterday was last week. I think we hit a double.
You had a double play last week that came in. You did. The only bet you lost last week was that sort of exotic halftime wager.
That's right, the Ravens first half.
But I'm going to recalculate, but we'll lead it at 6-1 down, but we'll take it up to the appellate court.
That's fine. But let me ask you, this is the only other question I have.
Wait a minute. I can't give you a stake, but we'll accept it. Yeah.
If Jaden Daniels had not won that Heisman Trophy, would you have been -1? You wouldn't have been -12. You would have been -1, right?
Of course.
Okay. All right. I just want to know.
You go to the racetrack, see, and the horse is 12-to-1. You bet $2.
That's right.
If the horse loses, you lost $2. If
That's
the
right.
horse wins, you win 26.
26.
Why? 12 to go 26.
24 plus the 2 bet. Yeah. Okay.
Man, they can come to well. If I live another 5 years, I might get your first wave there.
All right. This week's bets. Go ahead. What do you got?
What I got?
You got Georgia Southern.
I got Georgia Southern.
I'll read it.
-3. I got it. -3 versus Ohio.
This is in the Myrtle Beach Bowl. You are the only person betting on this in the world. You know that.
Look, if you want to critique my betting, that's one thing. But we're around 68, 53, maybe people want to listen to what I'm saying. And not trying to come in here.
Georgia Southern -3 over Ohio in the Myrtle Beach Bowl. What else?
We got WKU, ODU. To you, that means Western Kentucky, Old Dominion. We got Old Dominion -2.
Do you want to tell people where that game is? It's the famous Toastery Bowl. ODU, I didn't even know they had a football team. I knew they had a basketball team. I didn't know they had a football team. You got Old Dominion -2.
Old Dominion -2.
What else?
I wrote it all out neatly here. Lost that. So we're going to go with New Mexico State, Fresno State.
Yes.
I've been to New Mexico State like 3 times. Senator Minchie said the thing will bring me out there. That's what they were pretty good. And I'm always full of it. It never worked out. This year they're good. What's the line on that?
You're going to take New Mexico State over. You're going to go -3.5 over Fresno State in the New Mexico Bowl.
I don't know where y'all get that.
-2. Okay. Okay.
All right.
-2.
All right. Looking on this show. And then I got to fight Chuck Todd, Jack Maud, a Pittsburgh shooter. Damn. Okay.
Let's go to the NFL. Go ahead.
Steelers and Colts. I got the Steelers plus 1.5.
Plus 1.5 against Indianapolis, even though the Steelers are a second-string quarterback. Mitch Trubisky, you're okay with that?
Right, plus 3.5 against the Bengals.
Yes, you're off the. You would never have done this if Joe Burrow were playing. I know that, but you've got Minnesota plus 3.5 against Cincinnati.
Okay, LSU has 2 out of the last 5 Heisman Trophy winners in both quarterbacks.
I'm aware of that. That was those are the first ones they've had since Billy Cannon. Before Billy Cannon was making plates to make money illegally a long time ago, as we both know. What else?
You know, great life, Joe. Again, Browns and Lions.
You got Cleveland? No, okay. You got the Broncos in one, not the Browns. Broncos.
Broncos, no. Take the Lions -4.5. John Payton is coach of the year, but he's the way they go.
Okay, and what else?
2 times. See, now this means 1, 2. So if I lose, I go down 2.
Okay.
If I win, I go up 2.
Right. So this is Washington and the Rams, right?
Take over 50.
Over 50, even though Washington doesn't score. Okay, you like that bet. Okay.
Tell that little Chuck Todd, don't do this whiny little stuff. It doesn't work. It's because mine can't hire a coach. It's not my fault. They'll do the guys and throw you. What are you talking about?
Thank you, James. Best to everybody at home.
You bet.
James Carville. Vintage. You have no idea how many words we had to bleep out of that.
Not even sure what made it in.
No, just so many words had to go in that. So many. You sit there and you know he's cursing, and so you write down the time and you go back and you listen to it. fabulous attacks on Chuck Todd. Absolutely fabulous. I think Chuck will laugh at that.
Oh, yeah.
I think that's wonderful. We are attempting to get Jeff Ma at the moment. Jeff sends us something every week about things he might like to talk about. And this week, just as a preview, he said to talk about how they do bowl lines when people sit out. For example, Caleb Williams is not going to play with USC, right? Whatever bowl USC is in, Caleb Williams isn't playing. There was a kid, second string quarterback at Texas, and this has an effect. The second string quarterback at Texas went into the transfer portal, so he's not available for Texas. Texas is in the playoffs. This means that Archie Manning's grandson, Cooper Manning's son, moves up to the second quarterback. I was saying, Jeff, that you talked about how this affects the line. How did all the sit-outs, how does that affect the line? I mean, I think Drake May, right, from North Carolina, if they're in a bowl, he's not going to play. How does it work?
Yeah, I mean, the bowls traditionally have been hard to handicap, or part of the handicap for the bowls has been about the motivation, predicting motivation. Some teams don't care. Some people look at like Georgia and Florida State. Figuring out who really cares in that bowl game is part of the handicap, but it's become increasingly more difficult with all of the opt-outs that are happening in these bowl games. And honestly, I'm not sure how much longer bowls are going to be a thing, because if you go down to these games, starting Saturday, even these, non-Power 5 teams, because of the amount of players that they have that are entering the portal, because of the amount of transferring that's happening, these teams are just, even these like non-Power 5 teams are losing a lot of their important players. And so understanding who's going to play, and we actually talked about this with Bud Elliott on Best Process this week. We go through every bowl game and talk about who's in and who's out. Like a good game on Saturday is UCLA Boise State. So Boise State's going to be down to their third-string quarterback. UCLA may be also on their third-string quarterback, depending on whether Garber, their starter, can play or not, because their backup is in the portal already, and one of Boise's quarterbacks is hurt, and the other one's in the portal. So this has become an increasingly difficult thing in terms of understanding how to handicap the bowl game.
Would you basically stay away from them?
I mean, that's the question, right, ultimately.
Yeah.
We talked about this again because, his numbers and his model don't take into account a lot of these player moves. And obviously when you have quarterbacks, you can quantify that a little bit, but when you start getting into 4 or 5 offensive linemen and defensive linemen, it's very, very hard. So, again, like I think you have to try to, when you bet and you really are trying to win, you've got to figure out where you can find inefficiencies and where you think you can be better than a market. And a market is probably be better predicting the impact of a bunch of these opt-outs. It's hard for an individual or an individual model to do this. So, yeah, I think from a perspective of the pre-game line, meaning like before the game starts, trying to figure all this out, it's probably very difficult.
That's what I think. Carmel just picked ODU -2 over Western Kentucky. I told him I didn't know ODU had a football team. I thought they only had a basketball team. In the famous Toast Street Bowl, if you went through all of these on Bet the Process, it had to be a 7-hour podcast, right? That belongs podcast in real life.
It was two episodes where they were both over an hour long.
Wow.
I mean, have you looked at some of the names of these bowls, Tony? And have you seen that there's a Pop-Tart bowl where the winning coach gets to eat the Pop-Tart mascot?
I was not aware of that. I'm certainly not aware of that. There are too many bowls. Every team that's at 500 and some teams that are under qualify for bowls. But I'm not against the bowls because it gives us a week off. Because ESPN owns all these bad bowls. They own them all. So I'm good with that. You had a great week last week, 5-0. Coming out of a 4-1. You're 9-1 in the last 2 weeks. You're 39, 34-1, and you're a rocket ship at the moment. What do you have for us for this week?
Okay, I'm going to start with the Vikings +3 over Cincinnati. Obviously, Cincinnati's been impressive since Jake Browning has gone in there, but Minnesota's defense has been incredibly impressive. and they have an ability to really generate these sort of negative plays, and I think they will generate some of those against Browning, and I think they'll win this game outright.
Okay, then I'm not going to worry about it, but Carville and Chuck Todd got 3.5 on that.
Oh, well, then I'll take 3.5 also.
I will give it to you. Go ahead. What else?
I'm going to take Denver plus the 4.5 over Detroit. I think this is a spot where people are expecting Detroit to get good or get healthy or be back to normal. They're at home. They can score a lot of points at home. But I think the Denver thing is real, and I think the Detroit thing struggling is real. So I think getting 4.5 points with a Denver team that's exceeding expectations is good value here.
Carville, of course, went the other way, and it was 4.5. Chuck Todd went the other way, and it was 5 with Chuck Todd. I think I agree with you because I'm looking at Detroit, and their last 4 games, they lost 3 and needed a miracle to win the 4th. They look like there's something wrong there. So we'll see. What else?
I'm going to take Chicago plus 3 over Cleveland. I mean, if you look at what Chicago's done, their defense is playing incredibly well, and I think that Cleveland will have trouble scoring against them. I think the Justin Fields thing is real, meaning, they have incentive to win and figure out like how good he's going to be to figure out what they need to do with that number 1 draft pick. So I've been impressed with how they've played, and sometimes you look at these things and you think there might be a barrage, but I actually think it's pretty real because their defense is playing really well.
Okay. Wilbon will be so happy, it just makes me nuts when that happens.
I'm going to take Houston plus the 3 over Tennessee. Obviously, we all witnessed that Tennessee sort of miracle on Monday night, and it was impressive what Will Levis did, but I do think just Houston's a much better team here that obviously is still in the hunt. Getting 3 is, I think Tennessee loses that game by 14, which it looked like they were going to. This line's probably closer to pick them, so like Houston plus the 3.
Without C.J. Stroud.
Yeah, I mean they're a team that can, they have talent around him, so I think they will be okay.
Okay. What else?
And then I'm going to take Buffalo minus the 2 over Dallas. I mean, obviously we saw what Dallas did, but this is a spot where Dallas has been performing at a high level a bunch of weeks in a row. When you get into a situation here where I think, like Buffalo needs this game, they're at home, it's less than a field goal. I just think this is a spot where Buffalo shows.
Jason La Canfora felt the same way. La Canfora was really good. He had Philadelphia losing last week and Buffalo winning last week, which was, a lot of people had one of the two, but not necessarily both. And he likes Buffalo here, and I think some of that may be weather, right? Don't you think? Going up to Buffalo for Dallas and coming off of a really big win, a certain emotional letdown, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's just, again, like the NFL, you're never as good as you looked the week before.
Right. Or as bad.
And when you look for opportunities to find value, Dallas they look to be a very good team, but getting over that hump and beating Philly the way they won, now coming into a Buffalo game on the road, again, I'll take the home team. That if you had made this line before the season started, Buffalo would be certainly more than a field goal favorite. So have we really learned that much this season that would make us think that this is, in this spot, Buffalo should be under a field goal?
All right. Thank you, Jeff. We'll talk next week.
Okay.
Jeff Ma, boys and girls. 9-1 in the last 2 weeks, 5-0 last week. We will take a break. We will come back with email and jingle. I am Tony Kornheiser. This is the FanDuel read. As the weather gets colder, the NFL offers Stay Hot on FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money line bet. That's $150 if your team wins. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app is so easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, more. So visit FanDuel.com/TonyK. Kick off the NFL season. Well, it's been kicked off. We're like we're in week 10.
We're a little bit late. We're a little bit late on this. We apologize. A little bit late.
We're entering the fourth.
A little bit, FanDuel, official partner of the NFL.
At sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit fanduel.com/RG in Colorado, Iowa, Michigan, New Jersey, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Illinois, Kentucky, Tennessee, and Virginia. Call 1-800-NEXT-STEP or text NEXT-STEP to 53342 in Arizona, 1-888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org/chat in Connecticut, 1-800-9-WITH-IT in Indiana, 1-800-522-4700 or visit ksgamblinghelp.com in Kansas, 1-877-770-STOP in Louisiana. Visit mdgamblinghelp.org in Maryland. Visit 1-800-GAMBLER.net in West Virginia or call 1-800-522-4700 in Wyoming. Hope is here. Visit gamblinghelplinema.org or call 800-327-5050 for 24/7 support in Massachusetts or call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY in New York.
You're listening to the Tony Kornheiser Show.
Here comes Tony, here comes Tony's mailbag, looking so proudly close.
Banjos. That's Joe and Molly Chambers. Thank you very much. Nigel, you want to do the Bethesda Bagel ad?
Always love banjo. Bethesda Bagels, we love them. You will as well. Just go to BethesdaBagels.com for the location in the DC area nearest you. Then pop on in and you will be thrilled.
That's it for us today. Before we get to the mailbag, let me just say, pretty woman walking down the street. Pretty woman, the kind I'd like to meet. Pretty woman, I don't believe you. You're not the truth. No one could look as good as you. Mercy. That's Roy Orbison, who I once read.
contact Oxford approach on 125.09er. Good day.
Going to 125.09er flipper 82080. Oxford approach flipper 82080 1,600 feet.
Flipper 82080 Oxford approach altimeter 29er.9er 2 radar contact. Continue.
I don't know if we'll get news before
He might not make
the
it
Connor
to
Happer show, but it could happen on the weekend. And you asked the question, and I think we all ask, is, what's the benefit of firing a coach this time of the year?
Just let him finish.
But if it gets so bad, and last night was about as bad as it gets to understand.
Well, look at the Broncos last year when they lost to the Rams.
Yep.
And then they fired Hackett that day after.
I get it. Easton Stick was your starter. You didn't have Justin Herbert, and there's a lot of things going on there. And it wasn't all Easton Stick, by the way.
Yeah, that is far from the problem.
Yeah, that all of a sudden you are hearing those fans that are
all 15 of them.
But they're dedicated, man. Show me your lightning bolt.
Let's call it it's people that are betting on the Chargers that are losing. That's what the problem is.
And it's at a fever pitch at some point if you really want to care about your fan base. That's where I always say, okay, it makes sense if you want to make that move now as opposed to waiting 5 weeks, because that's the only benefit.
Yeah, and I mean,
it really is.
I think the only reason
But that was bad last night.
I think the only reason you would even consider going to Kellen Moore is if you feel like he would be your coach of the future and you were going to stay in-house, but I don't think that's going to be the case.
No.
Yeah, it hasn't gone well for him there. And about Brandon Staley, too. Like, he said he feels like he'll be the coach next week, and it's just hard to believe that, because not only did you give up 63 points last night, you're a defensive-minded head coach. If you've got guys like Eric Kendricks, Khalil Mack, and Kenneth Murray on that defense,
trust me,
and you still got 9 touchdowns on your opponent.
Part of me died when Khalil Mack went to the Chargers, even though he was kind of a shell of himself when he left Chicago. But still, that was it's
surprised we didn't see Max Duggan last night.
I actually kind of thought we might. When that thing got really crazy out of hand, and you don't have Herbert for this season, it's not like Herbert's coming back next week, that you probably at least want to protect your number 2.
When they got to 42, I was like, there's no benefit.
No.
You're not going to get anything out of a rookie in that situation. Nothing positive about that.
Other than just, do you want to roll him out there, get some type of experience? But what's the value of that experience?
Because that defense has their ears pinned back and they're dialed in.
Yeah, I mean, it's party time at that point.
Yeah, they're playing with house money.
Yeah. Although it would have been fun here locally. We could have seen both Easton Stick and Max Duggan.
For sure, but I don't think that's the light you want to see those two guys in.
No. You don't want to be a part of a historical... Now, this was interesting as far as the historical references to last night, what the Las Vegas Raiders did. Now, we all remember the absolute clunker that they laid against Minnesota in a 3-0 defeat in the hands of the Minnesota Vikings. So it would probably not surprise you that 35 points was a record for teams that had previously got shut out the week before in the first half. But the 62 points, did you know that is actually not the most scored in 4 quarters of play the following week after a team got shut out? That is the second most. I was actually very surprised. I thought there was no question that would be the most points ever scored by a team who was previously shut out the week before.
Well, who else did Brandon Staley play after?
I don't. You know what? And good on Brandon Staley. He's trying to. He is definitely lobbying for his job. He was not part of the one that had the most, which I believe was 65.
Yeah,
what I think so.
Probably a little before his time.
Yeah. So I don't. Brandon Staley was not part of that. But I go back to the original question, boys. How are we feeling today? Because the significance of today in the recruiting world and really for the future of Nebraska football is what will be making its way into Lincoln this weekend, and as early as I believe late afternoon. And that's Dylan Raiola and Dominic Raiola. The Raiolas making their way here, and they're not coming just to visit Uncle Donnie.
That second name you mentioned, I think, is more important than anything. Because I don't know in what world.
Dom, are you talking about Jeffrey? No, not that one.
I don't know in what world you can have a conversation with Kyle McCord, excuse me. I don't know why I did that. Kyle McCord.
There's a lot of Connors in the world right now. I get it.
There are. Kyle McCord and Daniel Kalen, and tell them that you're pursuing this without some form of confirmation that this is a done deal. I don't know in what world Dominic Raiola could ever even though his name's up in the Ring of Fame, could ever step foot back in this state and feel safe.
Took him through this again.
If he leaves here without leaving his son in a dorm room.
I agree, and I think that's the thought is Danny Kaelin is not visiting Michigan State. Kyle McCord is not either a lock on Syracuse or, hey, by the way, keep this name in mind, because I don't know if there's been a lot of mutual interest, but Louisville is also looking. I think what Jeff Brom could do for Kyle McCord in 1 year.
That's a good fit.
Like, I think so too. But yeah, I don't think any of that is happening unless you understand that there is much more than I'm not calling Dylan this, but as it's perceived in the recruiting world, an 18-year-old who's having a tough time making a decision. If it was something as simple as that, I think you're probably still betting on yourself if you still feel like, if you're Kyle McCord and you thought, hey, Nebraska was a really good fit for me, the money was good for NIL, I like the things that they sold me on. If you don't feel like there was something significant about that day, we talked about this the last 2 days. I mean, the timing of when the Dylan Ryland news dropped was about as bad as it could possibly be if you were hoping to get Kyle McCord. And I get it. Like, I don't want to make it sound like, oh, Kyle McCord, come on. Well, I guess we don't need you. No, I'm not going to say that, because that,
I would love an 11-1 quarterback.
Hell yeah, who wouldn't? And the scenario, Jimmy, that was going to play out was ideal, because you had a guy who only has 1 year. So there's no grand illusions of even 2 years. So if it doesn't work out in that first year where he puts himself into the NFL sweepstakes, that he would come back a year. No, it's 1 year and that's it, regardless of how you perform. There's the one thing that I truly, and now we're starting to hear from the McCord camp that could have played a factor. And I don't want to say played the factor, and I don't want to be overly presumptuous on this. I brought this up yesterday because I was thinking about it Wednesday night as we're all trying to figure out what changed. And I think we all kind of had an idea of what it probably could have been, but I don't think any of us had like full inside knowledge of like, okay, this is what I'm hearing, this is what happened. But now we're starting to get a little bit from the McCord camp. It's not coming from McCord's father, it's not coming from Kyle himself, but again, there's agents involved here too. And it was very similar to the scenario I brought up yesterday, and that is, we know the most popular position on any popular player on any team is the backup quarterback, when that first-string quarterback is struggling. And think about some of the most recent examples of Nebraska football. Hell, you talk to one almost every week with Adrian Martinez, of the pressure that he had anytime he made mistakes. Think about the COVID year with the Luke McCaffrey situation. This is so different because you've got a guy who comes in with expectations, as you mentioned, 11-1. So there's going to come with expectations. Given how desperate we are to see the quarterback position elevated from what was a dumpster fire a year ago to at least being competent, but there is expectation and eyeballs, this needs to be better. And then you have waiting in the wings in the developmental stage, and can't wait to see him get out there, is a 5-star. Nebraska's never had a 5-star quarterback. The first game, let's say that Colorado game, was kind of a, because we know that thing
went like it went last year?
Yeah. And we know that thing's going to be a circus in Lincoln. I mean, there's going to be so much emotion into that game. Say Kyle has a bad one. The calls to play Dylan Raiola are going to be, and I'm not saying even within the coaching staff, I'm saying external.
The 93,000 coaches in the stands. Yeah.
Exactly. That is going to be so loud, and that is going to be unavoidable for any quarterback that has a chance to look at each situation and look at it, all of the factors, who's in the quarterback room, fan base, schedule, all of those things. It doesn't, for me, it doesn't, I guess I should say, it makes more sense that you have the ability to say, you know what, I don't love that. And that's, I don't even think it's Kyle McCord saying, well, yeah, I'm going to have a struggle or anything like that. I don't think that's, I honestly don't think that's reflective. I think that's a guy that is an opportunist and is now looking at a situation of, do I want to put myself in that situation that even if I have a bad game, hell, even if I have a bad half of football, that there's going to be the 93,000 coaches, the calls for Dylan Raiola to come in, and then all of a sudden the week leading up to the next game, that's all you're going to hear about from the fan base. with the fishbowl that it is here, do you want to be in that situation? And I can see that definitely being a turnoff for Kyle McCord and being one of the factors.
Well, I'm going to be honest, because if I feel like Matt Rule, before he even talks about what we can do for you when you come here, what do you want out of this situation? And if you went full reins on this offense and you're never going to have to look over your shoulder, and that's the mentality you're walking in here with, this place isn't going to be great for you.
Because he just left a much more talented version of that.
Well, not even that. You brought up Adrian, but it's not even just like when Adrian's hurt. People were calling for Tommy Frazier to be benched. Yep. People called for Scott Frost to be benched.
I remember Scott Frost very well.
Frankie London is famous in this state because of Scott Frost.
Frankie can do better.
But I think that's the mentality you're walking in here with. This isn't the best situation for you, Kyle McCord. And not to harp on a kid, but really hope he doesn't have NFL aspirations, because NFL stands for not for long. And if you want to play at the next level and you're worried about who's sitting behind you, the quarterback position at the highest level might not be the best suited position.
Okay. I hear you on that. And where I would maybe, if I'm in the Kyle McCord camp to what you just said there, I'd say, true, this isn't maybe, okay, so I'll call my client. You know, I hear what you're saying about my client, but my client does have aspirations to play in the NFL. What he wants to do is he wants to use this final year of his eligibility as the final developmental year, the year that everything can be fine-tuned, the year that, you know, he can also show maybe a little bit more of that presence as a leader, showing the skill set, but also being able to show that he can be an effective leader. And in that type of environment, I don't know if he can be the most effective leader given all the outside noise that would be for his job and for, a young guy. Now, to your point, I get it, you get it. But if this is the beauty that all of these transfer quarterbacks that have 2 or less years of eligibility are able to do, and that is to look at each situation and say, what is the most comfortable for me? Because I feel like I'm going to excel in the most comfortable environment. I'm going to be able to put up the best numbers. I'm going to be able to put the type of film together from my sophomore, junior year to now my senior year that everybody's going to be able to, Mel Kiper and Todd McShay and everybody involved in the NFL draft will be able to look at it and say, man, this guy can absolutely sling it. And I feel like I can do the best work for myself and hopefully for my team when I don't have that type of external pressure. Now, external pressure is everything that also comes to the position. We get that. But this is where the player, in Kyle McCord's case, can look at each situation and say, I can put up numbers here, I can put up numbers here, I can put up numbers here. May not win as much here, may win more here, could maybe win a little bit here too. But what is going to help professional me more than anything? These are the things that we have to get comfortable with when it does come to getting a loaner. In my opinion, especially at the quarterback position when you only have 1 or 2 years of eligibility, they're going to make that decision, obviously, for those purposes, especially if they're a quarterback that has NFL aspirations. So I don't want to make it sound like, well, if Kyle McCord bows out of Nebraska because of that scenario, that necessarily makes him a bad fit for being a professional guy. I think it's a guy that's just wanting to maximize what he possibly can do in his final year of college football with maybe minimizing the distractions as much as possible. There's never going to be 0 distractions, we know that, but minimizing it as possible as long as you have options. Like Syracuse and Nebraska, that's night and day.
Right. What's the university that only fields 1 quarterback and doesn't have a backup? That doesn't exist. So, I don't know.
I mean, it's true.
That's not something that's unique to Nebraska. Now, the fan base is a little bit louder here, and the fishbowl is a little bit brighter. But if I'm a head coach, and we talk about red flags with Dylan Raiola and the 4 high schools in 4 years and all that, to me, that is a bigger red flag. Because I think there's something to, we need a transitional guy, we need a guy through a portal, we could promise you the starting job right now. And I think a lot of people, I think Matt Rule is probably willing to do that. But if you don't want to compete for a team that was 5-7 a year ago and has had a lot of struggles from the mental aspect, that's not the guy I want leading my program.
Yeah, and that's again, I don't disagree with that. But that's also where we don't really know. And again, I know it almost comes across as I'm really defending Kyle McCord.
Well, no, I think to some degree what you're trying to say is like he has to look out for the best interest in him, but I don't know if having that conversation and getting that narrative about yourself is benefiting you either, though.
And and I'm glad you brought up narrative, because that's where his team, and eventually maybe Kyle will, eventually maybe his father will. I doubt they're going to bare their soul to the Nebraska media.
Yeah.
But
402-951-1620.
And if you want to, Mr. McCord and Kyle, feel free on the 42-degree hotline. But I would say there is at some point going to be a need to, wherever he lands, to talk about the journey of what led him to that place, and obviously it's going to be brought up to whichever
Do you think we'll get that?
I think obviously, okay, let's say
I think there'd be more reference to Ohio State than anything that happens between Ohio State and wherever he
I think you're right. But I think also with the national headlines that Monday was getting, and then all of a sudden moving away from Nebraska, I think there's going to be some questions that will probably be directly asked to Kyle McCord at some point of what happened with Nebraska, by the way. He may answer that, he may not, he may quote answer it, but you don't get much information.
It just wasn't the right fit for me, and I'm very happy to be in Syracuse New York today.
Right. But I think internally, especially with the conversations that matter, especially for his professional prospects, that narrative needs to be a little bit less of what we're talking about right now.
Yeah, and about Dylan Raiola really quick for a second, too, and I think the other thing to kind of take inventory of is everything else that's going on with recruiting with Nebraska. When you look at a guy like Carlin Jones, that Nebraska desperately needed, but flirted with the ability of taking visits elsewhere, and they cut ties immediately.
Yeah.
I think that right there tells you the whole Dylan Raiola story, exactly what you could expect out of Saturday.
And we're now, and we've moved past Kyle McCord. What does the quarterback room look like outside of Dylan Raiola? But I go back to the original question, guys. I mean, are we all feeling great about this, just with the twists and turns? You mentioned you doubt that this would be happening, and I agree.
I doubt we get to Sunday without this happening.
I think so too. I think we're, and it should, because you know what? Sunday belongs to the Husker volleyball team. Come on, Dylan.
He walks out at halftime of the national championship game, throws up the bones.
Are we going to do
takes
a flight
jersey.
tracker from Lincoln to Tampa?
We should be. And more importantly, I think if you are in flight tracker season, I think you should be watching more than flights from Georgia too, by the way. It doesn't feel like he's coming alone, right? Like I know
he's trying. He's trying.
I know you're gonna have a wide receiver here that was previously committed to Texas Tech or Texas A&M, and we're gonna get into him. That's a really interesting situation in its own right. You got two guys that are committed to Texas right now that have been here with Dylan Raiola. You got the number one running back in this class that committed to Georgia to play with Dylan Raiola, and kind of feels like the band might be getting back together this weekend.
I like where you're going with that. Now you see you're throwing a little bit more icing on the cake of Dylan Day, but I mean, come on, Jimmy, let's not lose focus. Today is Dylan Day. It is Dylan Day. No, but I hear what you're saying.
I don't know if you can tell this story without talking about, hey man, Ryan Wingo hasn't signed anything yet. Right. Hey, Brandon Baker's still sitting.
And remember, Brandon Baker it was almost like Nebraska surprised him. He was almost.
He said that himself.
He was almost to the point that he didn't expect much, and then he was impressed to the point that they actually hung around a lot further in his decision than he thought it would be. So all of a sudden now you reintroduce a guy that you know very well into the mix and is now going to be at Nebraska. Does that change your mind?
Yeah,
I don't know.
And I don't necessarily. Let's say everybody comes, and you get a couple names that you're not expecting.
God, Jimmy, let's not. Because
I mean visiting. I mean just from a visiting standpoint. Yeah. And because there seems to be, and specifically after the count.
I remember that one day in May where we were all losing our mind. Like, this is so cool.
Yeah, right. But I don't necessarily know if that happens, and you only get Dylan Raiola to commit this weekend. If next Wednesday doesn't become very, very, very interesting.
Yeah.
Because there's going to be some last-minute deals.
Well, and that's the thing people need to realize. Okay, so signing day is Wednesday. So you've got the dead period that starts on Sunday. So all of these visits that are taking place are going to be wrapped up by tomorrow evening. Then it's crickets on Sunday as far as visitors are concerned. But all of a sudden, those are 3 key days of decision making.
And more importantly, to your point, the dead period, where only peer recruiting is happening.
Exactly. And that's that I was just going to say. Just the dead period doesn't mean the coaches can't. And we can't talk about peer recruiting without bringing up Dana Kaelin. Because you think about this current class, especially with a lot of the local talent, with what he did. We know he's visiting Michigan State. We're going to hit a break, but I want to get your thoughts on
Carter Nelson.
That name's been brought up a lot now because that was a big Dana Kaelin push. Dana Kaelin in general, too. We did, by the way, if you were wondering, one of the decommits for Nebraska that was a tough one. You mentioned Carlin Jones. Quan Lacey was another big one. Quan Lacey did commit last night, announced that he's going to Missouri. So if you were wondering about, again, any type of, I know, especially for you, Jim. That's if you would have been to Kansas, though, would you have been pretty excited?
I mean, I wouldn't say gross.
I want to talk.
Doug asked me to wear one. He wanted me to wear a KU hoodie, and I just didn't feel like wearing a hoodie, so we split the difference.
I want to talk about that Quan Lacey commitment because I feel like the weirdest thing, because it felt like it was going to be a Texas school that ends up getting that signature, and then
maybe Bama, because Bama was
right. And that's what I was about to say. And then Nick Saban came calling, and he ended up in Columbia.
And you're thinking,
sometimes 2 and 2 equals 5, I guess.
See, I could get on board with this. Is this like the Eric Dickerson he was committed to Texas A&M, and also the Trans Am shows up, and then at the last moment he goes to SMU?
How much horsepower does that Ferrari have?
It is Jimmy Allen. It's Jimmy Chavez. Myself, Nick Haley. Gary's off today. He's back on Monday. I want to give you our lineup, and we've got a lot to get to, as we mentioned. And we're going to be talking to Brent Ciancia of Big Six Previews. Did you see him in, you saw Brian Edwards in Vegas, right?
No, so he was going to meet me. You know what, Brian, I hope you're listening. I know you listen to this show. You backed out on me. My feelings are hurt. I'm disappointed. No, he was going to fly out and meet me out there, but he didn't make it.
Okay. Well, that's
apparently the beach was too comfortable.
Yeah,
I understand.
Yeah, I get it. But Brent joins us as we get a full day of bowl games starting tomorrow. So we will talk to Brent Ciancia about that and all the happenings in college football. Lee Sterling is back to give you his bowl predictions, and this goes all the way into the college football semifinal national championship. So we'll talk to Lee right at the end of 7 o'clock hour. 8:30, we're going to go out to Tampa and check in with Lincoln R. Neal of Huskers Illustrated covering the Nebraska volleyball team. A very, very, very impressive three-set sweep in that match yesterday over Pitt. They will take on Texas, who also looked impressive in their 4-set victory over Wisconsin. So Lincoln Arneal joins 8:30. We will get the very latest on the happenings. A lot of things that Jimmy kind of set the table for, too, with the recruiting world. A big 48 hours. Mike Schaefer joins us at 9. We'll talk to Vers at 9:20. And again, the lineup is powered by the rooferys at John Higgins Weather Guard. As I mentioned, Zone Hotline always open for you, 402-951-1620. 42 degrees of source by your mom's house. And you can also hit us up on the Equitable Bank inbox where they take banking personally. I am Handley at 1620thezone.com. Jimmy Allen at 16.
I don't have one. I don't work here. I don't have an email address.
We've covered this before.
Yeah.
Oh, have we?
Maybe one day.
Well, Jimmy and I have covered.
Oh, you guys have. Okay.
Yeah. We got a key to the door. We got a mailbox.
It's kind of nice because Schreiner has to wait for me to show up in the parking lot.
Yeah, I'm a big deal though.
So you got the all access.
See, since he's doing the overtime, nobody wants to come down here at midnight.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what it is.
You get the all access badge.
About to pass over at Downton Abbey, Highclere Castle.
You have Jimmy Chavez, who is also Jimmy IE at. I'm sorry, no, you're Jimmy IE.
Yeah, he's right. Get it right.
Guys, we are not even 40 minutes in, and I'm already screwing up the way to spell both of your names.
He spells it incorrectly.
Yeah, I spell it correctly.
Jimmy with a Y at 1620thezone.com. And then also, you can hit us up on the J-Tech Construction Zone Twitter feed. I am Nick Handley at 1620, and I know you're on Twitter.
Jimmy Allen, 1620.
There you go.
The common theme.
There it is.
Jimmy IE.
Yeah, with the IE.
I have no idea what's going on with my voice right now.
You all right?
It sounds good.
Very start at 6:40.
No.
Really?
Hell yeah.
Good. Phlegm building up over here.
That's good. That's a little extra depth.
That's why we got the cough button. It works. All right. So when we come back,
I think it still works.
Before we get back into Dylan Day, We got to talk about what we saw last night in Tampa. Nebraska is dominant as you could ask for, and now they get Texas. Is it a situation of the beware what you wish for when maybe wanting to see Texas over Wisconsin? We'll get into that.
And Sioux suit up for them. Get a little revenge.
We do need to get just get everything from the 2009 Big 12 championship.
Colt McCoy just felt a disturbance in the force and a pain.
Just keep Mac Brennan. See him hold up one finger.
Texas.
It is a Friday. We're happy you're with us, and we will come right back with more from Tampa and what took place with Nebraska. Moving on to the national championship. It is Mornings with Sharp and Hanley on 1627.
I think it's that. I'm not sure the actual castles represented in the game, but I think that what we just passed over was kind of the representation of it.
When you save on auto insurance for driving safe with USAA Safe Pilot, you'll feel like a big weekend of recruiting, especially as Dylan Ryla makes his way in. At what point will we get the news that we're all feeling good about, but hoping we can just
Red
say
smoke
it's
elevation
official
from South State.
Yeah, would they do that? They should do that.
They should.
I think that'd be fun. You know, I know you don't want to treat any certain recruit different than others, but I mean, this is historical. Nebraska's never had a 5-star
it's
quarterback.
the number 2 player in the country.
Yeah.
I mean,
well, depending on what publication you look at,
that's true.
Number 3.
I think it's like 7 on
I think they all have it.
Not exactly chopped liver.
I think we at least know he's I think at the very least, he is a top 3 quarterback in any publication.
Well,
so it's all good.
I know, and we talked about Danny Kaelin, and obviously he was also there, but the way Dylan Ryla played at the Elite 11 camp too, I think that does matter. I know it's not necessarily, it's not everything, but I'm a huge fan of Aaron Nolan, the kid that's committed to Ohio State, and I think he's the real deal. But I mean, outperformed him in certain aspects, and he adds that wrinkle of athleticism that Marcus Satterfield wants to utilize.
Yes, you don't want to rely on it, but it's there.
And he's not overly athletic where it's going to become a crutch for them either.
Yeah.
So I think it's the perfect combination of skill set. And that's weird to say about the number 2 player in the country, but I think it's exactly what this coaching staff wants.
Yeah, when you don't use it as a crutch, then it kind of protects you from yourself as far as a play caller goes, where it's easy to start leaning into that when there are other things that you want to do. I'm with you there. Last night, I just want to go to maybe one of the more obscure moments of Nebraska's victory over Pitt, and they did so in convincing fashion. Now, the third set especially bites out.
Yeah.
Really, the first 2 though, especially the second one, back and forth. It was good volleyball. Pitt's good. Pitt's solid.
Well, yeah, and you had them almost cut the lead 23-24 for that serving error. I mean, it looked like there was going to be a possibility that, we might want to dial in here because they might go 4 or 5 sets. Now, Nebraska's the only team in this tournament that's still in it that hasn't lost multiple sets in a game.
Yep.
Or in a match, excuse me. I got criticized on Twitter last night. In a match last night. So they're the only team left of the Final Four last night that didn't lose multiple sets, including those Longhorns that you see on Sunday.
Now, this is just kind of I don't know why this jumped out to me, but in that third set, where again Nebraska's rolling, all of a sudden Pitt has a little bit of a rally. I think they maybe rattled off 4 points in a row. They go to a timeout. The cameras are on the Nebraska bench. And we keep talking about, well, in every sport, too, you get to this point of the season, if freshmen are no longer freshmen, they're all sophomores, and because of that mentality. They have the camera and you see Harper Murray the whole time. And as she's getting instructions from both Jalen Reyes and then, John Cook, and they're kind of, just buttoning some stuff up, she looked so disinterested with what was being said. And I love this about it, because she wanted nothing to do with being on that bench. She was pissed that they even had to take the time out. She was pissed that Pitt had just rattled off 4 points in a row. She was pissed that thing was not over yet, and she couldn't wait to get back out on the floor. So it was the whole all right, come on, let's go. All right, yeah, we got it. Yeah, okay, come on, let's go. And I don't even know if she mouthed that. You could just read her facial expression. That's how she felt, and that's just one example of what I love about this team is that there's a little bit of that piss and vinegar when things are, because
They're self-policed.
well, we've talked it exactly,
Yeah.
and there's not one senior on the team. I mean, you could consider Lexi Rodriguez.
I was going to say, I don't know if you saw her when the timeout got called, because she had the ball in her hands and did the thing like she wanted to slam it down and hit the ball.
And
she was not happy.
In a match that they're in control of too. Like that, I love. And we talked about this a couple weeks ago. When you look at that bench, other than Jalen Reyes, who's pretty animated, but you see Kelly Hunter, you see Jordan Larson, you see John Cook. They're all just pretty chill, pretty relaxed, even in some of the more dramatic moments of a match. And you wonder, how can they stay so calm? Well, there's a great example of that too, of the way that this team, which is, we spent a lot of days talking about how likable they are and how kind of loose they are outside of the court. You know, they let everybody kind of in on like their social life and their happenings. And
are they on TikTok? I haven't heard.
Yeah, I see. I'm not on TikTok.
I'm not either,
but I have heard. But I mean, even in some of
I have it, but I wouldn't say I'm on it. But yes.
Yeah, it's kind of the same thing. I'm still technically on Threads, but I'm
same.
I haven't.
Hey,
You guys remember Threads? Yeah. What was your favorite memory of Threads?
Not joining.
I did, just in case. It was a backup plan. But I mean, on every social media platform, in Nebraska volleyball and their social media crew, they do a great job of also letting the fans in on it. But they're very likable. They're, again, it's just a loose group that seems like they're genuinely enjoying all these moments. At some point, you're wondering, are they having too much fun? But that's just what everybody's doing. But my gosh, when you see them on the court in those matches and in moments like that, when something like that, you know, they're going to win. It was just a matter of when they were going to wrap up that match. That the fact that they had to take a timeout as they were rolling because they just gave up 4 points in a row, like just completely like pissed them off. They wanted to get right back out there. Again, these are the things that I just love about this team's competitiveness, on top of being exceptionally highly skilled and very
by the
good
way,
volleyball
they're
players.
really good.
Yeah.
I don't think you can say enough good things about John Cook. Obviously, one of the best to ever do it. But, I mean, you know, in that moment, he knew he was going to piss his players off and knew that it was the right time to make that timeout happen and make some adjustments. And, hey, you guys seem dialed in. Let's make sure we're all dotting I's across the T's here. And it ended up being the difference in the match. But I think there's something to be said about the fact that arguably the two biggest moments of the season, the win against Wisconsin and then the closeout this set last night against Pitt for match point, all got decided on a review. And it never seems to rattle this team. They seem dialed in even in the most high-pressure situations where it's almost arguably out of their control at that point.
Yeah, and they were so good. You had everything at some point. I mean, defensively, they were great. You get Mare Beeson that, I think it was, again, in that third set where she all of a sudden gets 3 aces in a row. I mean, their attacking was on point. There was just moments, and I'm not going to pretend to be the volleyball whisperer here either.
Let's hear your expertise.
Yeah, here's the full breakdown. But I think this is the point when you watch them, and then you flip it over to Wisconsin afterwards, and you see the size and the physicality of which they play at. Nebraska doesn't have that. Nebraska doesn't have a Hannah Sprague, but Nebraska doesn't have a 6'9" player. There was that graphic of the Wisconsin players, like they had the still image of all of them jumping above the net, and then
effortlessly, by the way.
And then their wingspan when their feet were on the floor. It's like, okay, Nebraska doesn't have that. So, and you know, when you get to these Final Fours, usually not every team is going to have a similar identity. They're all going to have the one thing that has kind of gotten them there and what their strength is. And Nebraska isn't overly powering when it comes to the height that, you know, which they play on the outside. But they still got enough to get them by. And you bring up the Wisconsin game when they played them. I mean, they've already shown that they can, if you want to go at them physically, well, they can withstand that and they can bring their own punch to it as well. I just watch the way that they, in big matches especially, how at times they make it look easy. And I honestly didn't know what last night would look like, because you get to this point, you expect to at least see, 4 sets. And yet,
I know if you do you? Because
I did.
This team has been so dominant. Granted, they've had the easiest path. Yeah. I mean, they were the number 1 overall seed. But they've just been, and I get it, you're playing another number 1 seed and the number 4 team in the country. But I really, and this is no disrespect to Pitt, they're obviously very talented. But when you see the couple of losses that they had this season and the struggles that they had in this tournament already, I thought this was the perfect matchup for Nebraska.
I didn't have any problems with thinking that they would win. I thought maybe they would drop a set. But also, we're trained to watch this team more consistently throughout the season playing Big Ten competition. And I think last night, even though Wisconsin loses, they lost to a very good Texas team. I think we're also used to seeing Nebraska when they drop a set against a pretty damn good Big Ten team too. And Pitt doesn't play in the Big Ten. Pitt was a very good team, but not in the Big Ten. So this is also where not only Nebraska and what John Cook and that program do for this team, this is also where your conference serves you very, very well.
Absolutely.
Because they did make it look like they were playing a lower tier Big Ten team last night. And again, no disrespect to Pitt, but all the respect due to Nebraska, but also
and the Big Ten. Yeah,
absolutely.
You brought up Jordan Larson and Andrew Wizen on Twitter, and maybe she's the most interesting story going into Sunday because, she started the season on that Texas staff, and then obviously Cornhusker threw it through. She's from Fremont, but you have to wonder,
she's from Hupper.
True, excuse me. Sorry, she was born there.
We're going to get killed on that if we don't correct ourselves there.
But started the season at Texas, comes home, and now has to play a team that and maybe that's advantage Nebraska. You have something that has crossed enemy lines and come back home, and she's gonna be an interesting post game interview, win or loss on Sunday.
And to that point, and I think it's a good point you bring up there, and this is also where I think every team, no matter who would have been involved in the national championship, if you were that type of caliber team, I think you were looking at how they're going to roll out the Final Four this year and having the Thursday, Sunday, where you get the extra day of preparation. In a situation like that where you have someone on your staff that did spend some time with the team you're playing in the national championship staff prior to you coming back to Lincoln, like Jordan did, there's no way that that's not an advantage. Especially having that extra day to prepare. Like if it's a quick turnaround, like you get today and then it's tomorrow,
you can work on nuances. This is what they do. This is what they don't do. How can we prep this? Get some other bodies on the other side of the net. Let's simulate it and exploit.
And I like the fact that Nebraska had a chance to play in the first match as well. Then sit, then watch, because I think if you watch that first set, even though Wisconsin got the second one, I think first of all, you've scouted Wisconsin. There's nothing Wisconsin was going to do last night that was going to surprise you a whole heck of a lot. But being able to win, do your work, then play the waiting game of who you're going to be facing on Sunday, and it being a team that you're not familiar with as much, but also having somebody on staff that is, and being able to watch them right then and there too, I think there was a lot of positives from Nebraska's evening other than the obvious of being able to make quick work of Pitt. But I know a lot of us wanted to see Nebraska-Wisconsin because it's, I think, turned into a pretty good rivalry. And volleyball, as we've seen,
arguably has become the rivalry.
It is. And it's the numbers it did that Saturday night, of course. I don't know if people understand the gravity of Nebraska volleyball match. I don't care who it's against, doing bigger numbers than the Nebraska football game. That's crazy. And they did, because that was the Nebraska-Northwestern game. Then you had Nebraska-Wisconsin, did monster numbers. So people outside of just the Nebraska fan base were dialed into that.
Yeah, it's a national attention.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But I will argue the point that maybe a few more eyes coming from down south to be on this product may not be a bad thing either.
And look, these two teams are no stranger to each other. Nebraska's last national championship here in Omaha. They took down Texas in 2015. They've got history. The fan bases, more importantly, have history.
Lexi's son has anything to say about this game?
Yeah. And I don't know if Texas fans have the same type of angst that Nebraska fans have towards Texas. I would think they don't. I would think that it's more towards Oklahoma. It's more towards A&M. It's more towards some of their closer rivalries. But we do know that there's been some back and forth between the two volleyball programs. They have, you mentioned Lexi's son, but there's been players that have gone from one program to the other. There's been recruiting of each other's states. So from a volleyball standpoint, there's definitely history between Nebraska and Texas. But this is also where you draw in the casual Nebraska sports fan that maybe only pays attention to anything outside of football when it's postseason time. All they need to know is that Nebraska's playing Texas, and their day is...
Red will show up,
Yep.
yeah.
And you have, again, a little extra time to get out there to Tampa. And look, there's no bowl game going on. So this is your bowl allotment of money here.
That's a good point.
You throw it into the Big Red and be able to celebrate the national championship so close to the holidays. Why the heck?
We saw in Dominican Sue last night, obviously the attendance in Tampa. Do you think James Brown and Priest Holmes will be in attendance for Texas?
They're trying to pull out all the stuff.
Major Applewhite will
man. Major Applewhite. Oh, I'll tell you guys this one off the air.
Okay.
I got a Major Applewhite observation that I don't know if I necessarily want to share with you, but it's gonna be awesome. I think no matter what, I think Wisconsin, Nebraska would do bigger numbers, but I think this is still going to do very good. Also, by the way, the attendance was fantastic. They outdid
sold out, yeah.
Yep, LSU and Iowa from the women's national championship in college basketball. We figured that could be the case, and it was. The sport is growing.
Eating Caitlin Clark.
Yeah, without her, what would that attendance be now? I will never say that. I don't think I can ever say anything bad about Caitlin Clark's presence and what it's doing for.
I just like seeing Nebraska do something better than Iowa.
Yeah, I think don't we all? But the Texas-Nebraska matchup, just watching them and not watching Texas throughout the season, but watching them last night against a Wisconsin team that I think we all know how good is, and the way that they at times made it look really easy. There was chatter that maybe Texas gave you a better path to a national championship after watching them last night. I don't know. This is going to be a dogfight.
That crowd before the game too was just incredible. Watching Nebraska walk from the bus to the stadium, just immersed in a sea of red, and it's probably going to be none of those people have left Tampa for me yet. Yeah, they've all booked their stay through Sunday, and then you throw in the Texas contingency to it, and what you just talked about, in the angst and the rivalry between these two schools, and if you've never watched a volleyball match in your life, tune in Sunday, because you're going to see sports. Not a women's sport, not a men's sport. You're going to see sports and what it's supposed to be and what it's supposed to feel like in a big fight field.
And I think, and when we talked to Lincoln Arneal at 8:30, we'll have him confirm this. I know Andy Kendi was talking about this yesterday. He's also, obviously, the KTV sports team is out there in full force. That Nebraska...
And Matt Foster, right?
And John Baylor's still waiting for Gary to meet him in the lobby.
Baylor's got shorts on and he's loving it. They have... You've got two probably now in the national championship of the largest fan bases that were represented. Because Wisconsin, they've got a lot of fans, but from what Andy Kendi made it sound like is Texas has a crap ton of fans too. And it sounds like Nebraska's sort of, as we expected, sort of taken over, but Texas fans are not far behind. So when it comes to just the fan bases that are represented...
It'll be 70-30 Nebraska. Let's not kid ourselves. It's Texas. It's Texas football first, second, and third.
That's what I want to ask Lincoln Arneal, because I was actually sort of surprised when Andy Kendi said there was a lot of Texas fans there. But I think he was talking about just like the open practice. So I'll be curious to see if there was... Because on the broadcast last night, it looked like there was a lot of burnt orange. Still a lot more red.
Many of their fans are probably told Vince Young would be signing autographs after the game. So there.
I don't even know if Pitt had like a fan other than like, you know, their immediate family and friends.
Yeah, there was like that one section of blue and gold off to the left side of the screen. That was about it.
Just between the night they had and I just kind of felt bad for Pitt, but that's on them. Hey, they made the Final Four. Congratulations.
Probably found out you drew Nebraska in the Final Four, and everybody went, you know,
how can we help Pat Narduzzi? That might not go well for us. All right, as we get into the 7 o'clock hour, getting back to a big recruiting weekend of Dylan Raiola making his way in. Nebraska looking to finalize his recruiting class, and also the questions of, is the quarterback room complete? Who is a priority, and what does it look like? And also, I mean, it's Friday, guys, so I feel like we can sort of recap what was probably one of the most bizarre, at least 72 hours of covering recruiting and transfer portal when the two collide, like we saw come to a head on Monday, and how we got to where we are today.
5 o'clock got really fun on unsportsmanlike conduct.
Oh my gosh. I hope there's maybe it's not a full 30 for 30.
Josh Peterson needed a
maybe
hug
an
from
E60.
somebody.
We could maybe use an E60 about what happened on Monday.
Shafe needed a beverage.
And
No, it was me and John. Me and John were on Monday.
And guys, you know what?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because
I was thinking of the day we
Josh,
were here.
Josh was on Monday. Because guys, it's not over yet. That's the thing too. I mean, we can recap it, but
What will today bring?
yes, they're at the goal line. But as we know,
Do you run shotgun or do you undersend?
Do you
Nebraska
give it to Marshawn Lynch or do you get stupid and throw the ball?
We know Nebraska at the goal line sometimes
Maybe.
doesn't always equal points either. So
Run the ball, Satterfield.
we will get into all of that again. We're going to be talking Brett Cianci at 7:30. Lee Sterling right after that as we get into hour 2. It's Mornings with Sharp and Hanley and Jimmy here at 1620 The Zone.
When you save on auto insurance for driving safe with U.S.
Hour 2 here, Mornings with Sharp and Hanley, 1620 The Zone. Jimmy Allen in for Gary. Nick and Jimmy with you as per usual. We're going to be talking to Brett Cianci of Pick 6 previews at 7:30. Also, Lee Sterling this hour. He's going to give us his bowl breakdown. Lincoln Arneal of Huskers Illustrated covering Nebraska volleyball, who is in Tampa. He will join us at 8:30. Still got Shafe and Vers on the show. We're loaded. So, as we mentioned, today is the day to see if everything that started on Monday, Jimmy, is going to come to fruition. Everything that led a 11-1 Ohio State quarterback to look elsewhere. Everything that could also, I say could, I'm going to say will, could lead a Bellevue West 3-star quarterback to East Lansing. A lot of impact on Monday's news. And so here we are on the day that we know Dylan Ryle and family will be making their way into Lincoln for the umpteenth time. But this one is...
Oh, has he been here before?
I hadn't heard. I think he's even been to a baseball game before,
Well,
too, and a basketball game before, too.
And the one thing to point out about Daniel Kalin to possibly Michigan State is Michigan State just landed Aiden Childs, yeah,
from Oregon State,
who was obviously a big part of their future plans out there before.
And they've got a couple incoming freshmen as well.
Yeah, so
they're still on board.
When I found out he was taking that trip to Michigan State, I was very surprised. Like, obviously, you're really late in the process, and your choices are probably.
And I get it. He should be. He should be weighing all
1,000,000%
because he's graduating early. He's one to be on campus here in the new year. Wherever he goes, Danny Kalin should be looking at every possible opportunity, and also still weighing Lincoln. He should be.
Yeah,
I'm sure he is.
Because even if let's say Dylan Riley walks in day one and is the starter, I don't know if that necessarily changes Daniel Kalin's projection. He wasn't starting this year anyway.
No.
And he was going to redshirt. And you've got some guys that you chose to help bring into Lincoln as well. And nobody in the world should fault him if he goes elsewhere.
Absolutely not.
The door's probably not that open. I wouldn't be surprised if they made the call back down to Columbia either. I know Missouri's got their quarterback too, but you've got some guys. We talked about Quan Lacey now in that class that you probably feel comfortable walking in with. You've already been there one time, and I would be surprised if the folks at Missouri didn't understand the situation.
Yeah, it's usually
might be a little hard to take that commitment again.
It's usually a pretty awkward conversation.
Hey, if Casey Thompson can come back to Lincoln.
Oh my God.
We made it an hour and 12 before we brought that up, by the way.
We did mention though he looks good. Like he's got a
with
fresh,
the waves?
yeah, he's got a fresh new wave look with the haircut. He was hanging out with Gabe Irvin, so yeah.
What a weird story though.
How many? I know you got this on your show too, but this was more message board fodder than you saw it on Twitter and the pictures of Casey Thompson. Then people started looking at the student directory, and then all of a sudden we started looking at other names that were still.
Yeah, Oliver Martin's still there.
Yeah, we know Terry Palmer's still there too. There was one name.
I believe he's actually still enrolled in classes, though.
That would surprise me.
Yeah, I think because he talked about wanting to get his degree a couple of games ago, so I think he's actually still taking online courses.
This is also kind of the significance of what today is. I assume that this time, well, maybe not this time tomorrow, but let's just say by the time the Independence Bowl kicks off tomorrow.
I think there's a possibility by this time tomorrow. Like the film crew is standing and waiting right now.
Yeah, I mean it's just a matter of when, and that's. I know that sounds crazy because I know you've been a part of this. We all have. Jimmy has. When we're part of the local media, and what happened on Monday seemed too good to be true. And what mom and dad always say, if it seems too good to be true, probably is.
I don't know if it did.
I thought it did. But that's not to say that I thought, oh, this ain't happening.
See, because
I could not believe it was happening. It seemed like, man, I think this is really happening.
I thought Kyle McCord was gonna be that guy.
Yeah.
It's so weird that and this is all speculation. We obviously, like you said, we haven't heard from the court camp, but it just seems so weird that you would take a trip somewhere, invite a Julian Fleming with you, and have this big kind of a hoopla to have, albeit the number 2 recruit in the country, a incoming freshman be the deterrent. And we've heard rumors that Matt Rule may have said no to Kyle McCord as well. But if that's the case, and that's the deterrent, that just felt really weird. Because you do only have 1 year. And the weird thing about all this that we haven't even brought up yet, we don't know who's coaching that position next year.
And that's the other area that we have to pivot to when we get through this weekend.
So
first and foremost,
all the reasons that you had, if you're Kyle McCord, to say no to Nebraska, for a 17-year-old kid coming in being the reason why, felt very strange.
Well, and don't you wonder? I think that there is definitely a pitch that was made, and it's interesting because Marcus Satterfield was on all of these different trips, going all the way back to that Sunday where he's in Manhattan, Kansas with Will Howard.
Went up to Pullman.
Yeah, you're in Pullman. I mean, you are trying to turn over every stone, even the ones that seem at the time probably the most unreachable. You're making sure that not only are you doing your due diligence, but you're also, and again, I think there's some of this too. You're letting your fan base know, folks, we're taking this serious.
Yeah.
We know what we saw too. We hear you, but trust us. We know more than you do as far as
like
how
that?
impactful it was. What do you mean?
The coaching staff, because it kind of feels like the coaching staff may be a little too dialed in to what the fan base wants.
If it starts impacting decisions that go against what their personality has been, or maybe personality is not the right thing to say, if it goes against the identity that they've given us, like if they start caving into a lot of
Dylan Raiola starts running the triple option.
right. If you start to see things that impact in a negative way or kind of take them off of who they are, then yeah, I have a problem. And I haven't seen any signs of that. I don't mind that Matt Rule is dialed in because I think Matt Rule is also a guy that is able to balance that. I think Matt Rule always wants to show the appreciation and the respect of where he is and show that appreciation to what is a very rare situation in college football where you do have the fan support, you do have a lot of people wanting 365-day access, and there can be pros to that, but there can also be cons to that. And I think he likes to dwell more on the pros of it. I think internally with other coaches, they probably discuss the cons of that. And as long as you are aware of the cons of that, but you're not allowing it to, okay, guys, boy, they want our heads on this, so we need to make it look like we're doing this. Because we did get a couple of people that suggested that maybe that little 48-hour period of visiting every big-name quarterback was posturing. And I think we learned later that it wasn't. Now, did they really feel like they were going to get Cam Warren? Probably not. Well, Kyle McCord is part of that. Because remember that Sunday that they visited Will Howard, and then the following day they go out to see Pullman was that night.
Yeah, so they went to Manhattan. So Rule was
Rule
went to Manhattan.
Yep.
And then Satterfield went to Pullman and then flew Waco together.
It was Waco, and then you realize Kyle McCord is now in the transfer portal, and then before you know it, I think within 24 hours they were in Columbus. So, and that seemed, again, I think when Kyle McCord entered the transfer portal, that got everybody talking like, oh my gosh, Kyle McCord 11-1 starter. That is crazy. And he was the guy that they were this close to getting. So I can understand where people maybe think it was some posturing, but the fact that you almost got Kyle McCord tells me you were giving everybody the same type of sales pitch on what Nebraska could do for them, hoping that you could align with somebody, and they were that close to doing so with what I get it. Cam Ward has way more pro upside than what Kyle McCord has.
Which is incredible for a guy that started at Incarnate
Yeah,
Word.
Incarnate Word. Yeah.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of the reason that you even make the call to Cam Ward is because obviously he was very interested in Nebraska at one point. He felt like you had an in there. But
when he was the first time, so people, if you don't remember, when he was the FCS transfer from Incarnate Word before he went to Washington State, there was a lot of interest right there.
A lot of people felt like he was coming here. Yeah.
And that was the year they went with Casey and Chubb.
The only reason that I say that, I don't know if we learned it, like the Will Howard thing was very surprising to me. Just because he was pretty adamant about the 4 schools he was interested in. And it's not like I guess to some degree you have to try.
Right.
But it just felt like the lack of interest was pretty apparent from the word go.
It was a Sunday, it was Manhattan, not too far of a drive. Figured, you know what, it's not a waste of our time. It's just whatever.
And if you're going to Waco anyway, I guess it's on the way.
But see, and maybe to your point about Will Howard, maybe that was more to, I don't want to say, again, appease the fan base, but again, to send the message to your team and to everybody that is emotionally invested into Nebraska football. Maybe that was we know the chances aren't good, but we're still going to make sure people know we're taking it serious and we are talking to everybody that's available. And we want to see what they're about, what their goals are, and see if those align to what we can provide them.
I know you're in a weird situation where your offense was anemic at best last year, and you just had, I wonder how much this staff may regret doing all of that, because when you're at late night at a bar and you walk up to every girl in the bar and talk to her, it's usually a bad look to the next one, and the next one, and the next one.
Yeah, you just need one hit.
Which,
when you cast a wide net, which you up the percentages. We've all had to play that game at some point in our life.
As we're seeing right now, that hit hasn't come through yet.
And that's the thing. That's the important thing to remember. If we were to be discussing this time a week ago, Nebraska, okay, who are they going to talk to in the transfer portal? Okay, what are their options in the transfer portal? And then all of a sudden we get the news, hey, you know what? Dylan Raiola is coming to Nebraska. All of a sudden you lose complete focus of the transfer portal and you start thinking, okay, that's awesome. I would take that news over any immediate need on the transfer portal at quarterback. And then, I don't know how you feel about this, Jimmy, but I then put a heavy emphasis on Chuba Purdy.
Yeah,
because I think
he's got to be the focus now, right?
Because I think a lot of people would say, cool that we're bringing in a true freshman, a 5-star, no guarantees he's going to be ready to go from day one. You need to have a bridge guy. You need to have someone who is at least reliable. And we don't know if Chuba is yet, but I think a healthy Chuba, I think a Chuba who's familiar with his coaching staff, familiar with the offensive personnel, is essentially, again, if we're just going to look through the lens of the transfer portal, I think would be a valuable sort of tier 2 transfer portal quarterback. A guy that does have that familiarity, and you get the bonus of him, having known the system now for a year.
Well, and I think about a quote that Greg McDermott made a couple of years ago, where he said, we'd rather build through the draft than free agency, when he was referring to high school recruiting versus the transfer portal. And I don't know if you can really, and not even basketball, not even football, I think this is in general the sports and the way the transfer portal and NIL works now. I don't think you can have a preference of one over the other. Just because if you do want to build through recruiting and you want to have your heavy focus on high school kids, like it feels like a Dabo Swinney, for example, wants to.
How's that working for Dabo?
Right, but listen, Clemson's still pretty good. But with the way the transfer portal is and how you have to recruit your own locker room right now, and the fact that there is only 22 starting positions, it's going to have to be a rotation of how you handle it year in and year out. There's no way, unless you're the one of ones, the Georgias or and even Alabama to some degree has seen some turnover. It's going to be a matter of you have to police your own locker room, but also you have to keep an open mind to all options. Otherwise, you're going to get left behind.
Absolutely. That's the whole adapt or die. And this is where we had this conversation yesterday, Gary and I did, about where kind of the old school coaches are right now. Because it's not only the transfer portal, but it's NIL. And then it's the having head coaches like Matt Rule did, having to let the public in on something that I think we all, for the most part, knew, but then hearing a head coach say, like, okay, $1 to $2 million, that if Monday's scenario played out, that you have two $1 million quarterbacks likely on your roster, and one of them's holding a clipboard or at least sitting on the sideline until it's his time. Like, that's a weird thing to sort of wrap your head around. And then also,
I mean, it's happening right now in college football.
Sure. And trying to be able to manage the tension that can create when you've got certain guys that are making a certain amount of money, and let's say they're not performing very well. How much does that get brought up by a team? And if, like, hey, hey, bonus baby, or hey, $1 million guy.
Hey, amigos.
I figured you'd be a little bit better today. Taking out your frustration there, and all of a sudden, you create some friction. You have some division. These are the things that coaches now have to manage as well, on top of everything else that you have to worry about with recruiting. So if you are someone that wasn't used to that, and you peaked as a college football coach when this didn't exist, and now you're trying to evolve with it, I do think that for some coaches it's a big turnoff.
Yeah, and I think having guys like Terrence Knighton that seem to get it, or it can relate, and obviously a guy like Garrett McGuire that's not too much older than the kids he's recruiting and coaching, I think that helps. And I think that was part of the reason, like, that's kind of one of the flaks that Matt Rule got when he got here, was how young his staff was, not even including Garrett McGuire, but I think that was a lot of the reason he did want to get guys that were young and hungry, because he couldn't relate to how recruiting and NIL works now, because he was never a part of it. Right. So it was a way to kind of fast track that approach, and I think they've handled it pretty well.
I'm going to get to Brett Ciancia here in a moment. I want to go to the 42-degree hotline and say good morning to Gary. Good morning, Gary. How are you?
Good morning, gentlemen. You guys must be reading the same article I'm currently reading about Cam Ward.
I'm not reading an article on him right now. I have a Woodhouse script in front of me, though.
He has visited Miami. He liked that visit. He apparently is going to Florida State. And then in another paragraph down here, he says, well, I haven't set a third visit yet. I'm continuing to talk to a lot of other schools, so I'm going to play it by ear. USC is in there. Nebraska is in there. So there's still...
Now, Gary, let me, because today is it's Dylan Day, but we can all hope, because remember what was being, I think, with reasonable belief there, but Kyle McCord and Dylan Riley at one point. Can you imagine the state of euphoria if Nebraska somehow got Cam Ward and Dylan Riley? I don't even know if my mind can go there.
And one other shout out before I let you go. Congratulations to the women's volleyball team.
Absolutely.
I hope we can turn that longhorn symbol upside down.
Yeah.
And it does show that there is capabilities of a freshman athlete coming into a program and taking that program over the hill. So,
Gary, I just see what you did on Dylan Day. Way to bring it home.
That man can bring home the rainbow and get us to a bowl game in season 1. It's proven that freshmen has the capabilities of doing it.
Thanks, Gary.
I love it, Gary.
Love the show, guys.
Appreciate it, man. Good stuff. Bye-bye. See what he did there?
Hold on, because
he turned the volleyball success into the freshman impact players.
I know we got to get to break. Can we open up that Can we open up that can of worms in a minute, freshman? What are expectations for year 1 if Dylan Riley is the starter?
We were talking record-wise or just on-field performance? Like both. His individual? Oh, God.
Because, I mean, it feels like this, 6 wins would not be enough in year 2. Like, I know it would technically be an increase.
See, I think 6 wins would be depending on how he plays. If they could have been, say, an 8-win team, but the quarterback play kept them from getting 8 wins, then I think there's... I don't want to say I don't want to say you have a problem, but then
because that feels like it's a repeat of year 1.
Yeah, then I think people get a little itchy and scratchy. I think if you're 6 wins, but maybe the defense took a step back. But your 6 wins and you saw the quarterback from day 1 to game 12 getting better and better and better to by the end of the year, damn, he was looking really good. Then I think you're okay with that. I think it's all about the context of the season. Here we are. What is today? The 15th, and we're talking about.
See, I think that Eddie's not even committed yet. By the way, he's still committed to Georgia.
And we'll have that conversation probably as soon as January 2nd when we all come back after the holiday break.
Well, some of us come back. Some of us will be working at that time anyway. We're not all slackers around here, Nick.
What are you guys be doing that week? It's the holidays.
We're talking about our favorite Christmas songs.
Oh, okay. That's interesting. All right, we are going to, maybe Brett Cianci will tell us about his favorite Christmas songs. We're going to get his thoughts on some of the bowl activity going on, also the happenings in college football. It's just been crazy in the transfer portal, especially with the quarterbacks, and we will talk to Brett about all of that. Also, Lee Sterling, as we do kick off the bowl season starting tomorrow, Lee will give you some of his best plays of the bowl season, and Lincoln Arneal still to come at 8:30 as we will break down what we saw last night. Lincoln, we'll just listen. What he saw last night, and then the big Nebraska-Texas national championship matchup. Schaefer and Burr still to come in the final hour as well. It is morning for Sharp and Haley and Jimmy, 1620 the zone. Brett, first of all, good morning, my man. How are you? And do you got the bowl fever finally?
Yeah, good morning, guys. Thanks for having me on. And, it's 42, I think, bowl games this year. It's going to be a great lineup. Really heats up later in the month, but I'm excited.
I wanted to ask you about this. I've never had a chance to get your thoughts on it. And we know that this happened in Nebraska in 2015. It happened in Minnesota this year when you get a 5-win team in because there's not enough 6-win teams to fill all the bowls, and so you go with the APR. Look, I know bowl games for the most part are not going to be cut down. In fact, they're probably only going to get more. But are you okay with 500 season being rewarded a postseason, and if you do get down to a 5-win team, that you could still potentially make a bowl game? Like, is that just, you got to be cool with it because that's where we are in college football?
Yeah, I think it's still a net positive thing. I think that a lot of those 5 and 7 teams and 6 teams, it's going to be transition teams. I think in Nebraska, those 15 play practices for the first year coach are huge. Getting to know his roster, developing the young guys, installing more scheme from the coordinators. So I think there's still a very positive. I think there's still a room for the players. The final piece on the schedule there. Now, do the players do it the same? I don't think so. I think their views have changed on it. You see just by the opt-outs, transfers happening before the bowls. Another part of that is not their fault. We need a better, more strict timeline on the sport. But yeah, so I think the players' attitude might have shifted, but mine still remains the same. The bowl games are getting removed. Okay, getting 6 and 6 in there. We're going to help develop the players, and it's still a great experience. And you know what? I'm going to watch them. So I'll take as many as we can because 2 months from now, in the middle of February or March, we're going to be wishing we had a New Mexico bowl to watch and break down.
You mentioned we kind of got to get past the Howards versus Florida A&Ms of the world on Saturday before we kind of get to some of the more high-profile matchups. But are there any games that stick out to you that are a little bit under the radar that may be the best matchups of this bowl season?
Yeah, there's one. The Oklahoma versus Arizona game caught my eye. Obviously, the playoffs are big, and the New Year's 6 games are big. But if you're looking off the radar a little bit, I look at the Arizona team. Jeff Fish really did a nice job improving this program. First year, the second year, especially this year, the third, very complete team. Going up against the second-year Brett Venables Oklahoma team, who I think is looking at the quarterback now. So certainly take a hit. And for when we try to talk bowl games is Josh is a lot different kickoff than they do. Alternative Uncle. So I'll take I like that one. In terms of Saturday, the one that stands out would be Texas Tech Cal. 2 Power 5s going against each other. I like seeing those kind of matchups more than too. I'll be honest, I like them all, but it keeps that college more close to your Power 5, so I like seeing those head-to-heads.
Brett, the happenings going on right now, we're living it here when it comes to the early signing period. On Wednesday, we've seen obviously some drama with Dylan Raiola, but also in the transfer portal, the quarterback market. When you do look at some of these, first of all, quarterbacks that are landing in different spots, but also the quarterbacks that are still out there and the potential impact, where do your thoughts go when you kind of see this fluid situation and how it can I mean, we've seen teams that we're talking about in the college football playoff, teams that we're talking about New Year's Six Bowls be dramatically impacted by a transfer quarterback. Is this something that we continue to see evolve to the point that we're probably going to see more and more each year? Or do you think that there is sort of a leveling off period at some point?
Yeah, well, I'm not sure where that point is because it's gotten bigger every single year. Especially the quarterback position. The coaching carousel, it's basically the quarterback carousel now. So just you reset every single season. Players want to see what their work is, want to see what position battles they can get in. I don't know why. There's no one spot in the field, no leader of a program, but they seem more apt to rotate around. Yeah, you're right. You look at the top teams, you got Washington, Michael Penix, he's a transfer guy. I don't know if it's been years, he transferred up to one season in the player. We had a few months at Ohio State. The Heisman candidates, the quarterbacks that were in New York City, they all have transfers themselves. Penix, and the winner, Jaden Daniels, stuff in Arizona State. So, yeah, it's just a part of the game now. And for Nebraska, yeah, you want to just stockpile as many big arms as you can, as many 5-star, 4-star guys as you can, and let the position battle happen in spring ball, summer ball camp, and even during the season in some cases. But you want to start stockpiling talent on every position, mostly a quarterback there for Nebraska.
It kind of seemed to be perceived as a down year for the SEC. They still lead the nation in All-Americans with 12. Did you perceive this as a down year for the SEC when you have two teams discussed for the playoff, a Heisman Trophy winner, but Georgia obviously tumbles, and you have one lost Alabama team kind of waving the banner now?
Yeah, it's so hard to compare because they're being graded against themselves. I mean, in some seasons, the SEC will have 5 top 10 teams, and it's a catch-22 because in those types of seasons, everyone just complains that they're overrated. They're still in the top 10. They don't all belong. That's possible. And then now when they have a couple of teams struggling, it's like, oh, look, I told you they were overrated. So, I think it's still the strongest conference year in, year out. I don't know the specific ebb and flow year to year. It's got the best high school football talent. It's got the best college talent. And then you see it on draft day. It's the best pros come out of there. The coaching schemes, ebb and flow year to year. But in general, it's the toughest conference. You got 2 playoff contenders, Georgia, Bama, 2 dynasty tier teams. You got Ole Miss, who's a team that would be in that 12 teamer next year if it settled out as it was. With a 10-win team. I think my people might think that some of the brand names, Florida, Tennessee, teams like that have been down for a couple seasons. So maybe that draws into it, but no, I think it's still the strongest conference.
Talking to Brett Cianci at Pick 6 Previews here on 1620 The Zone. Look, we know that we're going to see an expanded playoff next year, so this exercise doesn't...
All right, so we landed at Heathrow in London. We'll fly around London a little bit, sightsee on our next flight. We saw Windsor Castle and Eton College right at the end there. We flew over Reading. I think that's how they pronounce it. I think we saw Highclere Castle, a.k.a. Downton Abbey, or at least what the game represents it as. We saw Stonehenge. So all sorts of stuff on this flight. But next time we'll see London. We'll try to get over to Dover, the cliffs of Dover. We will fly across the Strait of Dover, I'm thinking, over to Calais, I think is how you pronounce it. And then we'll probably just fly down the French coast. I do want to see... whatever it's called. Hold on. You all know what I'm talking about. The castle in France. France, castle on the coast. Mont Saint-Michel. I might be mispronouncing that, but definitely need to see that at some point. Mont Saint-Michel. Where exactly is it? Let me look on the map. So it's there. Oh yeah, well that might not be on our next flight. That might take a bit of time. Actually, from Dover we might want to go to Dunkirk first. Go to Dunkirk and then fly down the French coast. We'll see. But anyway, that will be next time on Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020 World Tour. Until then, signing out.